Welcome back to CTV Morning Live. There's a look at how you can get a hold of us for our Ask the Expert segment with Brenda Hollingsworth. 789-6559 is the number to call, extension 2803. You can always reach us via our Facebook page, our Twitter page, or send us an email to ottawa.morning@ctv.ca. Brenda, always a pleasure to have you here. A lot of the times we've been talking about what happens with accidents, and a lot of the times it's been motor vehicle accidents and the process of how things go and the time that's required in terms of figuring everything out. I feel like I know the business essentially right now, but a lot of the times we're not taking a look back at all of the different things that you would cover when it comes to personal injury.
Right, so the most common thing that we think about when we think about a personal injury claim is a car accident involving two motor vehicles. And while that's probably the majority of the cases that we see, there's some other ones that people should be aware of, other injuries they might suffer where there could be a claim for compensation.
What are we seeing? Can you give us a few examples?
Well, this winter in particular, slip and fall accidents have been extremely common, and they give rise to claims very often. So if you've fallen on a sidewalk, a parking lot, a roadway that hasn't been properly cleared, salted, sanded, and you've injured yourself, you may well have a claim against the property owner.
I was going to say, at that point, whose responsibility will that come? That's probably a lot of the research right there. In certain areas as to where you are, who's responsible for it.
Yeah, sometimes it is controversial, and just to avoid any questions, if it's your own driveway, don't call me. You can't sue your husband. But
you said you were going to salt it and you didn't.
Yeah, we do get some calls like that, believe it or not, but generally if it's not your property, so if it is a private residence, sometimes we get those calls, not as often, but where it's a commercial property, there's probably someone who's responsible, or municipal, or in front of different utilities like Canada Post mailboxes, those kinds of things. They're supposed to be cleared, and they're supposed to be salted, and the weather is supposed to be monitored to make sure that what's done is appropriate. And so we have good success getting compensation for those claims.
When you're looking at that, would it be a slip and fall and you break a wrist on the landing? Like, are those the things that you'd be seeing? Yeah,
very common to break wrists and very common to break ankles. Those are the two most common. We do see some broken hips too from slips and falls, but those tend to be elderly people. But for the mainstream public, tends to be wrists or ankles.
And I think I can understand. It's an unfortunate situation when you injure something. But if it was required for them to use their hands to work, or that was part of what they're doing, or they were in construction, there's certain things of why there's more of an effect to what happens.
I mean, some wrist injuries are pretty minor, and even wrist fractures, a lot of them you wear a cast for 6 weeks and there's no problem. But a lot of others are very complicated. If you break multiple bones, or if the bones shift, if you get hardware put in your wrist, it's very uncomfortable, and you're probably going to have it taken out. At least by the time people get to me, they've had problems, and so they're more likely to have it come out. So there can be complications with those kinds of fractures.
So we're looking at slip and falls as another one. What are some of the other ones that you see?
Yeah, one of the other common things is where there are pedestrian accidents or bicycle accidents. We haven't quite hit bicycle accident season, but we certainly have seen pedestrian accidents this winter. Again, very common to have pedestrians struck by motor vehicles where the car is making a right-hand turn. Pedestrian has the crosswalk, pedestrian heads. Car doesn't see
Is that the most common one that you normally see?
Yeah, sometimes it's a left turning vehicle, but I find the right turning probably to be the most common. I guess partly because it's difficult for the pedestrian to notice the right-hand turning vehicle because it's behind them, and so they can't take evasive action. So those can be very serious, as I'm sure you can imagine.
Absolutely. So these are things that you tend to deal with a lot more, just not on a more public scale that we've been talking about on the show.
Right. Well, the car-on-car accidents are very dramatic, and there are often very serious injuries. More life-threatening maybe than a broken wrist. But certainly pedestrian accidents extremely serious often, and cycling accidents, as we've seen the last few seasons here, very serious.
It must have been difficult for you when you read the headlines with stories like we saw over the last couple of years with our cyclists here in the city to understand just how far the problem can go and how long of a process it's going to be for people.
Oh yeah, I mean the injuries are serious when it's a serious bike accident, and the process is long. Fortunately for pedestrians or cyclists who are hit in a motor vehicle accident, there are the accident benefits we've talked over the last couple of sessions. So there should be funding for income replacement or rehab, that kind of thing. So that is, you know, as long as they know to apply for it,
right,
it's there.
Which is something we've talked about in previous segments. We have a couple more segments to join with Brenda Hollingsworth. So please, we'll be back after this commercial break. If you have some questions or you'd like to give us a call, the information listed on your screen, 789-6559, extension 2803, or you can reach us via Twitter, Facebook, or our email. We'll be back after this commercial break. By the way, if you are looking for information and you want to ask some more questions but want to do it in the privacy, you can check out their website, www.askbrenda.ca. The email is listed on the screen, as well as her phone number. We'll be back after this.